So this is where we were yesterday. So we started by doing just regular formatting. So we didn't do anything to the data. We just try to make it look nice. So one way we could do that is to add borders. So we can add some vertical borders. I put some double lines down here. I put a solid line. So remember, when in doubt, if you don't know how to do something, it's probably up in one of these menus somewhere, but there's a lot of stuff in these menus. If you're not quite sure, you can always highlight what you want and then right click. So this is going to be especially important when we get to looking at the graphs, because the graphs, though they might not seem like they have a lot of different pieces to them. So for this one, you will see format cells. And this is how I like to get to all this stuff. Again, there's lots of ways you can get to it. Some of these things you just can't do as much with just the presets that they give you. So by going here, you can see you can change a lot more stuff with number. You can do that up here as well. You can change alignment. Again, you can do a couple things here, but you have a lot more flexibility and a lot more control when you go into here. You can wrap the text around, so if it goes too far, it'll put some of it on the next line. You can merge the cells together, so make one cell into 5 cells into one cell. A couple other things. You can change the font, right? You even have some more options here, like strike through and make it superscript, that kind of stuff. Obviously, you can do all the font stuff up here like you would do in Word. Border, you can select what border you want. You can also select the color, and then once you do that, you can say, where does it go? So you can say, I want this kind of braided looking one, and I want it to crisscross an X here. And you can also make it a different color. So if you're gonna make it a different color, make sure you make it the color first and then click where you want it. Same thing, you can do the fill, you put patterns in. So, I don't know why that didn't work, but you just have a lot more control if you go in through there. You could also do like the fills right here, so you can highlight something. So if you wanted to highlight a row or something to make it stand out, you could do that, and then use a paint bucket to make that stuff stand out. You can bold things obviously through here. So that was formatting. You can center things. Another important thing is the number of decimal points you have. So if you have like an average here, let me delete these two because I'm going to do these today. If you have like grades, I'm going to do this one today too. So if you do have decimal points when you add something like a formula or a function, you can say I want exactly 1 decimal point or exactly 2 or no decimal points. So whatever you want, just make sure it's consistent. So I don't want to see like 3 in some and none in another and 1 in a third one. So make sure they're consistent. One nice thing is if you do add a formula or a function like average, you can use that autofill. So in the bottom right corner, there's a little black square. You could hover over it and you can get this black cross without the arrows on the ends, and you can drag. And you can drag up and down and left or right. So you can drag this way and it will fill in with the averages. A nice thing is it also gives you the option to fill only the formatting or only the values without the formatting. So if I say without formatting, then it just takes all that stuff. This one was already green, so it stayed green. So now if I want maybe average zip code, probably doesn't make any sense. So maybe I delete that one. And then I can make sure that my decimals are exactly what I want. So maybe 3, maybe 2, maybe 1, but again, I'd be consistent. If you're taking all averages among columns, make them all the same. So the first thing I want to look at is, I've had a couple questions. So to make 1 decimal point, you just highlight them all, and then as you go, if you change one of these, it'll make them all the same. They're all highlighted. So one thing I want to show you is some people have been asking about what's a formula. So a formula is just, it's really, really simple. It's just like you can just add 2 numbers or divide 2 numbers. It's up to you what you want to do. So I'm going to create some kind of score called the Hare ratio. What is that? I don't know yet. But you also might notice that it doesn't have all the formatting. It doesn't have the borders and stuff. So one thing you can do is you can use this autofill to actually fill just the formatting. By default, it'll just copy everything. But if you say formatting only, it'll just give me the formatting. So now the angled, and if you look closely, you can see the borders and stuff. It didn't give me that left border though, so you can go back and you can always go to format cells, pick the border you want, and then say, put the cell in there. So there you go. Maybe you want to do it on both sides. Maybe you want a different one. It's up to you how you want it to look. So you can do that. So for the hair ratio, I'm going to do a formula, so not a built-in function. If your formula wants to use functions, you can do that, right? So if you want to take, well, find the max out of all this and divide by the min of this section and then divide it by their zip code, then you can do that. That's fine. I'm just going to make up something like, I'm going to take the student's zip code and I'm going to divide it by their height. And then I'm going to subtract, remembering about PEMDAS, their age, divided by their number of siblings. Does it make any sense? No, but whatever. So that's my hair ratio. And then I'm going to autofill that all the way down. And here we have some problems because we have divided by 0. So maybe instead of doing divided by number of siblings, maybe I do times number of siblings just so I don't get the divided by 0 again. So I can autofill that down again. And this is one of those places where I have some have 2 decimal points, some have 1, some have 3. So I can just say expand them or shrink them down. And then you can format that. Maybe you want to bold them. So there you go. I have some hair ratio. Maybe I graph that to kind of see what that means. I don't know what it means, but maybe clearly it's gonna, the biggest effect is probably gonna be how many siblings they have, since you might be either multiplying by 0 or this person gets multiplied by 9. So it's a really small number. You can do anything you want with a formula, right? It can be just this divided by this is fine, or this plus this, which is kind of a sum. So I try to be a little more original than that. So also, if you wanted to, for the conditional formatting that we did before, this was just a row, right? This was all 3 of, or sorry, the column. This was all 3 columns. So you could use these other ones to represent maybe like their height. So I can highlight all these, go to conditional formatting, and then you can fill it with a data bar. So it's already green, so you might want to change the color of that. So one thing you can do is you can make it however you want, which is kind of like a default. So again, you don't have that much control over it. But once you go to manage rules, you can see, if you already have it selected, you can see current selection, or you can say the whole worksheet, which will show you a preview of everything you have in here. So you can double click on that, and now you have a lot more options. So you can say, only show the data bar and don't give me the numbers. Maybe you want to do that. You can also say, instead of the maximum being automatic, you could say, I want the maximum to be whatever the maximum value is in this list of stuff. So it's like 180 centimeters or something like that. And then if you want, you can change that lowest value to be the lowest, which might not make sense, because if your lowest value is 170 and your highest is 180, it's going to look like 170 is nothing and 180 is everything. So it might not make sense. So you can tweak it, but you can put a number in here, all right? Or you can say, make it the a percent or like the average or something like that. So I'm going to go like 140 as my minimum. And then you can change the colors and stuff like that. And then you can apply that, and there you go. So now I've gotten rid of those numbers, which maybe you want to, maybe you don't. It's up to you. But this just shows you, well, these people are taller, right? It's clear to me who's taller. So it's kind of like a bar chart. So we are going to do, so this was our formula. We have a bunch of functions in there. So we actually have one function that we haven't talked about. I think yesterday we probably did this, but we could do something like, max grade, min grade. And these would be 2 of those functions that you need if you look at the rubric. So if you already know the name of them, which are max and min, you can just type them in, and then you can highlight the data set. Same thing, you can come in, and again, you can hit tab or double click or just open your parentheses and do the same thing. And there you go. And it's up to you how you want to format these. You can put like a border around them. You give them a background color. You can bold them, whatever you need to do. You can align them a different way. So that would count as min and max. You'll notice too, it says one of the data has to be across the row or column. So these are across the columns and these are across the row. So those check off those boxes. So I want to also look at their 3 grades. So each student's grades in CSP, chemistry, and literature. So what I'm going to do first is I want to figure out what the average of these things are. So you could put it over here, but I want to put that data right in between this yellow and red one. So if you go to the actual column letter or the row number, if you want to do it in a row, you can right click on that actual row or column and say insert, and it will automatically insert a column to the left. By default, it'll also format it like the one on the left, but you can click on the option thing that pops up. It looks like a paintbrush and say format it like the right or not format at all. So just make it white. I'm going to keep it as is. So the average. And here again, if you forget the name of it, you can use this f of x button. So if you wanted to use the f of x button, you could. So this would be average. And then you could highlight the cells you wanted and click OK. And then really easy, you just grab that autofill in the bottom right corner, drag it down and let go. This would be bad, right? So this is very obvious that I have either repeating decimals or I have a whole number, an integer, since there's only 3 things. So you can say decrease the number of decimal points or increase it. As long as they're consistent along the row, it's fine. So that is their average. So now that I have their average, what I want to do is I want to say, is this a good grade or is this a bad grade? Maybe pass, fail, maybe ABC, it's up to you. So just like it was in JavaScript, we can use if statements. So to do that, you can use your little f of x button, and you can either search for it or it probably is under most recently used. But if you double click if, you will see the things that you need. You need a logical test. So this would be something that would go in the parentheses in JavaScript. So something that's like equal to or not equal to or greater than or less than, something that returns either true or false. So since we're dealing with numbers, you're probably going to see greater than or less than, or you can do greater than or equal to or less than or equal to the same way you would in JavaScript. So for this one, I am looking at this student in row 2. So I can click on their average and I can say if their average is greater than or equal to a 95, right? And I'll actually tell you what it is, right? Their average is a 95, so that actually is a true statement, right? So if you did 94, their average is still greater than 94. If you did 96, you'll see it's false. So that's just a preview of what it's going to say. So if this is true, what do you want to do? So this is my if statement. If it's true, I want to say, I want to pass. And if you look closely right here and right here where I say pass, if I click away, it will automatically put that in quotation marks. So just like in JavaScript, if it's a string or a word, it needs to be in quotes. Otherwise, it's going to either think it's a value or it's going to think it's a formula, right? Either a function or a cell, like H2 is a cell, right? So it's going to think pass is a cell, or it's going to think that you're looking for a function called it. So if you're using this interface, it will automatically put quotes around it for you. If you're typing it on your own without using this interface, you need to put quotes in it. And then we can say, what if it is false? So we can say fail. Pretty rough. You got to get a 95 to pass my class. Again, if I click away or hit tab, it will put quotes around it. So you can see what the thing looks like. It's equals if, and then in parentheses, the first thing before the comma is the condition. And then if it's true, what do you want to do? And if it's false, what do you want to do? And you click OK. And in this case, it's pass. So instead of doing that for everyone, we're going to use our trusty autofill. And you can see that these people pass, these people fail. And you can combine this too, right? You can do a conditional formatting, say, make it green if they're passing, or put an icon set. So if it's pass, do one thing. If it's fail, do another thing. So you can play around with those as well. So I want to have more options here. So instead of just pass, fail, maybe I want to do ABC. So what I have to do here is I have to embed another if statement. So this would kind of be like your else if, or your if else if in JavaScript. So if it's true, if it is above 95, maybe I want to say A. And again, make sure you put quotes around it if you're typing it in here. It will automatically add quotes in here if you didn't. And if you put quotes around it in here, it will just do nothing. So it's smart. And then instead of saying fail or B, what I want to do here is I want to say, well, now I got to check again, right? So I know if it's greater than 35, it'll say, or sorry, 95, it'll say A and it'll be done. So it'll move on. Otherwise, I got to check again. So I have to actually put another if statement inside of this value that's false. And you'll notice it's not case sensitive. So you can do capital If or lowercase if. So now you need to know the parameters, right? So if, and then you got a condition. So you can click on your average again, which you should remember as H2. So now I can say if this is greater than 90, let's go greater than equal to just to stay consistent. And then what do you want to do? So I'll hit comma, and if it is greater than 90, I want to say B. Right? You don't have to worry about A anymore because the only way it can get here is if it's not greater than or equal to 95. So if it's looking at this part, it means that it's not A. And then you can say, and if it's not above 90, you can say C. And then you can close your parentheses. For this part, you're going to have to put quotes around these. Right? It won't do it automatically for you. And then you can click OK, and now you can auto fill this down. And now you can see all your A's, your B's, and your C's. If you wanted to do this on your own, right? So maybe you wanted, this is the minimum for the project is 3 things. So we can do A, B, or C, or okay, great, bad, whatever you want to do, you can pick 3 things. But if you want to do a 4th one, you could say, well, instead of putting C here, you could put another if statement. So you would type an if where that false condition was. And then you would say if H2 was greater than or equal to 85, and then comma, and then you could now say C for if it's true, comma, and then if it's not true, you could put F in. So if I hit enter, you're going to get an error statement here saying we found an error and we're going to try to correct it. And basically it's saying, do you want to add another parenthesis here? And if you look closely, it will color code your parentheses. So this is a red one at the end, and it will show you that the matching red one is right here. So we closed and opened this one and this one, but we did not close this very first one. So you can click OK, and it knows in this situation that you should have done that. So you can hit yes, or you can hit no and add it yourself. Either way, it will add that 3rd one, that 3rd parenthesis. And then you can autofill, and now you can see this person's below 84, so they have an F. This person's below 84. And the nice thing is, if someone has like an A here and they get a 0, if you update this, it will update the averages, it'll update the conditional formatting, and it will update the grade. So it's updating a ton of stuff in a split second. So that would be your if statement. So if you have trouble with that, you go back. I'll be posting this video after it renders and I trim it. You can go check that out again. So that is a requirement to have at least 3 things. So you have to have an if statement inside an if statement. You don't have to do it inside, but you need at least 1 if statement embedded. All right, so that brings us to graphs. So the easiest way to put in graphs is to go to your Insert tab at the top. So if your screen is wide enough, you will see charts here, and they'll have drop downs. So you can see a bunch of different options. These are all, at least the ones that are stacked up, are pretty much the same thing. They're just either 2D or 3D or vertical or horizontal. Some of these don't make sense. So this stacks 2 sets of data on top of each other. And this one stacks sets of data that equal 100%. So these are basically like pie charts almost that show you like where the most data is coming from in that set. So that one probably doesn't make any sense for most of you. Also, these lines, these line graphs, line charts, these are over a set period of time. So your x-axis would be time. There's no time involved in this. Unless you want to add a column for time and make up some data, you shouldn't be using that, right? So the only reason why you should use a line graph is if you add time. Also, you need to use 2 different kinds of graphs. So use a bar and a line, they're the same thing. Not a line, sorry, a bar or a column, and then a pie chart. And just remember, a pie chart is part of a whole. So we'll go over an example of that in a second as well. So to do this, the easiest way to do it is select your data. So right here, I have my students. So I just selected that. Nothing was clicked or anything. I just selected that data. And then if you want to select another thing, maybe like their averages overall, you can hold down Control and then select your next column. Notice that I took the first row where it had their labels as well. So if you do that, it will most likely add that to your chart, which is nice. And you can do more than just one row or column of data. You can do multiple ones. But for this one, let's keep it simple. I'm going to do just a 3D or a 2D column. And I'm going to move it down here just so it's easier to see. So obviously from here, you can expand this a little bit. So make it a little bigger. And here I have a lot of options. So I'm not sure if this automatically aligned or it's because I aligned it last period, but if you want to align this and it's not the way you wanted it, you can right click and go into all these options, or you can just use the alignment like we did before. So if you want to angle it the other way, you can do that. You do have a title, right? Maybe you want it more specific, or maybe you want to make it bigger. You can do that here as well. Something you are missing is your label and your axes. So up at the very top, you have chart tools. So if you're clicked on your chart, this will show up, right? If you're not clicked on your chart, you won't have these menus. So click on the chart. You now have design and format for your chart. So the first thing you can do is you can add elements to this chart. So maybe you don't already have a title. You can put those in. Data labels are nice. So you can actually say, put in the data labels, which will give you the actual scores. Which is also kind of nice. It's kind of hard to read now, but we can adjust these. There's also a lot of stuff you can do with the data. You can switch your kinds of charts and stuff. And then there's format. The other one is format, and there is a drop down in the top left corner that lets you format different parts of your chart. So the chart area, which is everything, the title, which is the title, your axes, your plot area, which is not everything, it's just this rectangle that has the data on it. So you can play around with all these different things, right? You can do the data labels. Right, that I don't think that even existed until I added the data labels. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it, probably the easiest way, again, like anything you do, right click. So if you want to change stuff about the bars here, you can right click on the bars, and then depending on where you are, these things will change, right? So right now I'm on the data labels or the data series. So the series of the bars, the labels are the numbers above it. So if I say format data series, it'll bring up this extra menu on the right-hand side. And this doesn't look like a lot, but you have a lot of options in here. You have all your different parts of your chart and your graphs. And then you also, for most of them, have at least 3 things. So effects, I don't know what this one's called, but this is like 3D. Oh, that's effects. The first one's fill and the border. And the next one is series options. So for this one, you can go to fill, and you can change what it looks like, right? You can make it a gradient fill if you wanted to. Ooh, fuego. You can change those things. If you go to your series options, depending on what kind of graph you have, there might be more stuff, but there's a gap in between all these. So you can actually make that gap smaller, which will make the things look like they're wider. If you go all the way down to 0, they'll be touching. So it's up to you how you want to do that. So maybe you want them to be really close, but not quite touching. You can do that. A lot of different options. You can make them look 3D, or you can add a drop shadow to them. There's some presets you can use. Right, so the drop shadow. You can go down to 3D. You can do a bevel, which, remember, it makes it kind of look like it's popping out. So maybe you do something like this. Ooh, fancy. You can mess around with all that stuff. Likewise, you can right click on the data labels and say format data labels, which again are the numbers. So you can say, just give me the number. You can say, where does it go? You can change the size and the alignment of it. You can change all that stuff. You can change the font. You can put a border around them. You can change all this stuff. There's text options, which would be the actual text that you're looking at. You can put an outline on the text. So just make sure it's readable. Another thing you can do is you can just click on those and you can go to alignment. So maybe you want to do it up and down. So you can align it that way. All right, same thing, you can, instead of going over here, you can still use these tools over here, like bold it. So looking pretty good. Obviously, you would add labels. Maybe instead of going all the way up to 120, because it's an average, maybe you want to go in here and right click on your axes, so format axes. And then you'll see stuff like, oh, where do I want to start? Where do I want to finish? So maybe I go to 100, and then how many tick marks do I want? So maybe instead of my major tick marks being every 10, maybe I want them every 25. It's up to you how you want to express that stuff. So there you go. Now it goes every 25. So Maybe you have to make it a little taller to fit everything in. Chart area is this stuff back here. So you could put like a picture back there. You could get rid of it completely, which I'll show you in a second as well. So one more thing before I show you how to print this and make sure it fits on the one piece of paper. Let's look at how we can do a pie chart. Remember, pie charts are part of a whole. So a lot of people like to do, well, how many people picked hot dog? How many picked pizza? You'll see if you do favorite food and you select everything and you try to make a pie chart out of this. It's going to look really weird, right? It doesn't have any data. That's literally what it's going to look like. It's just going to list all your stuff. So they're all words. There are no numbers. So you can't make a pie chart out of words. So what you might have to do is you might have to say like, pizza, hot dogs. Let's just stick with these two. So you could add more if you want. So what I want to do is I want to count how many pizzas and how many hot dogs. It doesn't make any sense for me to literally go and count 1, 2, 3, because this is Excel and it does it all for you. So there is a function called count, which just tells you how many things are well, it tells you how many numbers are in a amount of data. Count A means count all, where it counts everything, including labels. So that would give you text and numbers. And then there's a count, there's other ones too, like count blank, how many blanks do you have? But here's one called count if, and this says counts the number of cells that meets a condition. So if you click on this one, you can also use the f of x button, but this says, what is the range? And then what's the criteria? So my range is, my range is all this data. And then you'll see it's going to be a comma. And then what's my criteria? So you have a couple options. You can put in pizza in quotes, or since I already wrote the word pizza over here, I can just click on that, close my quote and hit OK. And now it is going to be 9. A little trick here too, you can actually autofill this. And you see it says 7, but be careful, because if you click on this, you will notice that it did shift down to hot dog because it knew that I went down a row, but it also shifted all this data down as well. There's a way to lock the cells in using a $sign, but probably easier, you could just move this up to make sure that the data is correct. So now it's easy for me to see pizza has 9 and hot dogs has 8, which is kind of nice. So now what you can do is you can highlight this, go to your pie chart. I'm gonna do a 3D pie, maybe a pizza pie, good one. It has a chart title, but it's not right? So maybe you do your own pizza versus hot dogs. Again, you can highlight that. You can use these tools over here. Oops. You can use the tools in Home. It's really frustrating for me because on Macs, there's no file right here. So every time I want to go home, I click file. Everyone else uses a Mac, has that issue. So again, you can do a lot of stuff here. You can actually click and drag this out so they're actually separated a little bit. If you click once, it highlights everything. If you wait a second and click again, it'll have just an individual piece of the pie. So you can actually have, just a pizza slice coming out if it was pizza. Again, you can right click, or you'll see that these things change as you click on stuff. So format legend, if I click here, I'll go data series. You can right click on here. You can add a data label to the actual pie chart. So now you see I have a 9 here. It's because I had just one thing selected. So if I had this one selected, it would hopefully add that to it. So if I delete that and then say add data labels, it'll put it on each. So I have 9 and 8. You can go in here and actually say what they look like, the size. You have label options. So maybe you actually want to put the category name on there as well. So now it says hot dogs and pizza. So in that case, we don't really need our legend anymore. So we can get rid of it. You can actually stretch this out as well. So there you go. So I would actually change this, right? Make it bold, maybe put a background on it. You can change the colors of it. If you wanted to, you can get an image of pizza and make that the background of it. So you can play around with all these things to make it look nice. One thing to notice is both of these charts actually have a white background, which is fine because the back of your color is going to be white. But if I were to kind of overlap this a little bit, you'll see that you can't see through it, which is kind of annoying. So maybe I want it to fit into a rectangular shape. That's a problem because I can't see it. So if you're on the chart area, you can actually say no fill, and it will get rid of that background, that white background. So now I'm not wasting a bunch of space or covering anything up. And again, it's hard to tell, but there is a line around it. So there is a line, like a light gray line. So you can go to your border, which is under chart options, and say no line. So now there is no line. Likewise, you can click over here, no fill, no line. And that way, when you print it, you don't see boxes. Sometimes boxes, if you line them up nicely, they do look nice, but we want to try to print this out with the least amount of white space. So one thing I will tell you is if you angle a cell, right, even though it looks like everything ends right here, it ends where this angle ends. So it actually ends kind of over here. So you might want to extend this a little bit over here. The only thing I'm missing is a title. So again, we've done this before, but if you want to insert it, you can right click on the row number, say insert, and then put a title. Pizza makes you SMRT. Smurp. Pizza makes you smurp. And then you can make this bigger. You can bold it. You can do whatever you need. And if you wanted to make this be centered over all of your data, you can actually highlight where you want it to go to, where you want it to center, and then you can click merge and center. That makes it one big cell, and at the same time, it basically just clicks this button, so it centers it. So let's check out how it looks. To do this, you can go to File, and you can go to Print. And this might be, nope, it didn't, so that's good. So you'll see that it fits pretty well, but there's a ton of space over here. By default, it might have no scaling on, which is going to look something like this, which clearly is bad because it's going to print on 4 sheets of paper, which you need to fit it on 1. So the first thing you need to do is make sure it fits on 1 page, and that will scale it out to fit whatever is bigger, the width or the height. And in this case, the height happened first. So a lot of people think that you need to extend everything to the right to make it fit perfectly. So before we do anything with that, another trick you can do is you can go to your page setup, and under margins, you can center this on the page. So instead of having a big space over here, it balances out on the left and the right. So when it updates, you'll see that it's kind of hides all that white space over there, but we can still fix that. If you really want to, it's not a huge deal, but you can get rid of the margins. So you can just make all the margins 0. This will really make it stretch it out to the edges. Since we're not printing it on paper, we don't have to worry about like the edge of the printing area and stuff like that, so it's fine. So it really fills everything up, which is actually pretty good because that pretty much did the trick. So I don't really have to change anything. But my point was, let me show you what it might do. If you do have something that's a little bit taller. Also, if you're on a graph and you hit print, it probably will try to print the graph, so make sure you click away from the graph. So now if I hit preview, I just made that one chart a little taller. So it actually just zooms everything out. So all of this data got smaller, and now you have space on these 2 sides. So again, instead of trying to stretch everything wider, you can actually just shrink stuff this way, and then it will zoom in closer. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to make your shape of your data and your graphs together into a rectangle that matches either 8.5 by 11 or flip-flop it so it's landscaped. So if you go back now and you just adjust this like we had before, you'll see now that when you go to File, Print, it will have zoomed in. So if you keep stretching things out, your text is going to get really small. So when you print it, I'm not going to be able to read any of these numbers, and that will be bad, right? Not being able to read numbers is basically just as bad as not putting those numbers, right? Right away, I can see something like, well, I have everything centered as far as numbers go, but I don't have this column centered, right? That's not very consistent. I don't have any labels over here. Probably make my title a lot bigger so I can see what my data is about. So when you're ready to print it, you can save it as a PDF. You can go to Save As and change it to PDF. You can go to Save as PDF. There's a built-in Adobe PDF button, which has been acting really weird this year. Or you can go to Print, and you can change your printer to Adobe PDF. Printing as a PDF and saving as a PDF, they're not the same thing. They do different things. So I would make sure that you try to print it as a PDF. I did try it last class, and I tried to do Save As after I set it up, and it did work. So I'm not saying save as won't work, but I'm saying I know that print as a PDF will work to print it this exact way. But again, make sure when you look at it, you don't like cut off a bunch of numbers and stuff and look at it after you do finish it. So then you can hit print and a dialog box will come up. So that is, we did a lot here. We did the if statement with an embedded if statement in there. We did a formula. We've done a bunch of functions, and then we did the graphs, and we did how to lay it out and print it.